The Houston Texans select.
And welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles. It's 3 days of drafting is now done, and we've got 9 picks plus a raft of free agents, and it finally feels like we're taking some material steps forward.
With the third pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Derek Stingley Jr., defensive back, LSU.
Picks. Let's just get right into Derek Stingley at number 3. What did you make of the Stingley pick?
Honestly, I was shocked because in the past 48 hours leading up to the draft, we had heard that, Nick Caserio loves Stingley. And I was like, Caserio, for this entire time we've known him, he's always played his cards close to his chest. He's never really wanted to have stuff like this leak out. So I thought it was just a smokescreen. I thought they were trying to send that out there, say, oh, we love Stingley, maybe try and get another team to trade up for him, or just hide the fact that, we like a different player. Maybe it was Sauce, maybe it was Kayvon, someone else. So I was shocked personally. But the pick makes a lot of sense. This is how Nick Caserio likes to build his teams, back to front from the secondary first. So he gets his next J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, that alpha cornerback one. Hopefully Stingley can live up to his hype and his potential, man.
Yeah, I got a text about 6 hours before, and it said Stingley. That was all it said. And I was predicated on a couple of things. And I think they got it out there because they wanted to see who else was convicted on him and wanted to take a chance at that 2019 tape could be his, permanent level. And I think when you think about the position of corner, Jordan, it's a year-to-year position. The level of physicality and athleticism required to be elite at that position is second to none in many senses, because there's you can't hide with a hamstring injury. You can't strap up your knee and expect to mirror and match, a wide receiver or elite one, certainly. So what did you think of taking the cornerback position 3? Because it's been over the history of the draft, very, very rarely done.
Very rarely done. I guess the last one that comes back to recent memory is Jalen Ramsey, that being that high. I don't even think he was at 3. He was at 5?
5, yeah. 5, yeah.
Yeah. So top 3 pick cornerback, I think it's only happened a handful of times in NFL history. So you need to live up to a high, degree of production, perennial Pro Bowler, All Pro, to get that kind of return on investment. So that kind of gives Derek Stingley high expectations. But then at the same time, you kind of think about, every draft class is different. And it's been talked about how this draft class was not the consensus and didn't have the stars up top. And so you might not, no matter where you're picking, no matter what position, you might not get that same return on investment as you would in previous years. Like last year with all the quarterbacks and elite talents like Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase and stuff like that. This year was just not simply as strong as other years. And so it's not necessarily Nick Caserio's fault, you know what I mean, to pick a corner that high. That's just how the draft class turned out to be. Yeah. That's what he was seen as, one of the best players in that draft class. So to me, I'm not too worried about it. It does put higher expectations on him, but man, this is a guy we've seen play at the highest level of college competition when he was 18 years old as a true freshman. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I think he hopefully is built for this moment.
And what makes you think that the last 2 years, I know one was injury, the program was kind of falling apart, went from the epitome of college football to the pit within, one off season. What gives you confidence that his ability to stay healthy or reclaim that 2019 form at the pro level will be it? And would you have picked anybody else above him, like Sauce went next and Thibodeau went shortly after?
Yeah, it's tough. To be honest, nothing makes me more confident about, him staying healthy, because it's really just luck. It's nothing that we can really predict as outsiders. But I am fairly confident, I would say, in him, putting in the effort and the work that needs to be done to be a true NFL pro, because of all the, the stories that you hear about Stingley, about his work ethic, and that he is, really built for this moment, built to be a star. He's like a silent killer. He won't say much, but he'll put his head down and he'll do the work. And he's someone who at his age has always been advanced, always been above his peers at his age group. And so hopefully he can continue and carry that work ethic to the NFL, because I think also going through those hardships in those past 2 years, you have to think that he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder now because he might think that people are sleeping on him and that he's got to prove himself. And I think he's the type of guy that is smart enough to know that, like, hey, the work doesn't stop now. Just because I got drafted, it doesn't mean it stops now. He's going to have to continue to do that. And then to answer your second part of the question, if I would have taken someone else, I'm a very risk averse person. I don't like to take risks. So I would have went Sauce over Stingley because I do think, there's less injury concerns and the decline in play didn't happen for him. Gardner was really only on an upward trajectory. Other than that, I might have taken Kayvon, but I'm sure we'll talk about kind of that defensive end hole that got plugged with the free agent signing. So that makes me feel a bit better about that.
Yeah.
But in the end, I'm pretty happy with it. I can get behind it and root for him for sure.
I think for me, it has the widest range of outcomes for all these picks. I think you've got a guy who could be a shutdown corner like Caserio was sort of speaking in Cal's ear. If you saw any of those videos, rather interesting to watch the rather muted demeanour of the owner or inherited owner, and as expected, right enough. But he said these guys don't grow on trees, and I suppose it's the hope and the projection that he has, or will reach that level of athleticism again. Because I think corner is one of the hardest positions to transition to in the National Football League, but also actually all the skills and all the kind of raw athleticism is kind of the same because of the way the game's going and five wide sets and a 70% in nickel. The responsibilities are kind of similar. So obviously the route tree and stuff he'll face and the concepts, and people will try and test them. But yeah, I think we'll find out early. It could be a Kareem Jackson like year one, is my kind of thought of. Goes out there, first round pick, big SEC school, comes in, not quite the same kind of premium spot, but yeah, you'll get tested early, and you'll find out a lot early. I think we had a pre-draft podcast, Jordan, and somebody was on here, and they said I think it's a question of not if he can be a good pro, it's how much does he want to be a good pro. And I kind of twinged a little bit when you saw him in the suite in Vegas, and they're sitting there, and the family were quite nonchalant about it. Yeah, we expected this. It all kind of felt very muted, and maybe that is the attitude you need to be a corner, because I don't think I've got the mentality for it. But it just kind of felt like very casual. This was expected from an early age. This was, our right sort of thing, but this is the time where you really got to earn it, and talent where you're picked kind of is irrelevant. So I think for me, he could be, there's something really nice about having a premium potential. One of your best players could be your corner, because that's never really ever been the case for this team in its entire history. So if you solve that with this, that's a huge building block into the future. If not, then, the complexion of this class could look very, very different. But I for me, Stingley, if he reaches even 90% of that 2019 tape in a manner that he's physically more gifted and developed in the pros, he could be an asset for a long time for this team. So I understand why he did it. But there is of course some risks attached.
Yeah, then that's what I kind of think of my overall thoughts on this draft class is, like, especially in the early picks, like, they were swinging for the fences. They were going for the high upside guys between him, Green, Pitre. Those first three really stand out to me as high upside guys that might have a bit of a transition period to the NFL. Like you said, cornerback's hardest position. I would not be surprised if Stingley, gives up some big catches early on. And just the expectations, I think for us, they're going to be sky high. For fans, I think we need to temper it just a little bit, just because of historically how tough it is for cornerbacks to transition. But I'm pretty bullish, I guess, on his long-term prospects.
Yeah, it's almost like a 3-year transition, I think, in some senses. So people could kind of get a little bit worried and a bit concerned, and rightly so. But yeah, I think you'll know where he is, and you'll know this whole draft class in 3 years' time as we're in the 2024 season, and that's the kind of probably the benchmark for any class, because you see the complexion. The 2018 class looked great after year one. Nobody's really here now. The 2019 class promised a lot. Looks like Lonnie Johnson's on the way out today. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Sharpen, bust, etc. But looked like we replaced Lonnie and Sharp with both these picks.
15th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. The Houston Texans select Kenyon Green, guard, Texas A&M.
Texans then traded back with the Philadelphia Eagles. They picked up the 124th, 162nd, and 166th pick to do this trade. They dropped back 2 spots. The Eagles then took Jordan Davis, and the Ravens took Kyle Hamilton. And that kind of felt like you drifted at a sweet spot for, some later round picks. What did you make of that move, firstly?
At the moment that it happened, it seemed great. We're getting, I think it was 2 or was it 3 extra picks?
Yeah, 3 picks, yeah.
3 extra picks, right? So that's pretty good return for just moving down 2 spots. My kind of take on it is that they were going to take Green at 13. Either way, no matter, I don't think they were going to go Hamilton or Davis or whatever. So I don't think that they felt that they missed out on their guys. Like I felt like Green was the guy anyways. So to get those extra picks and still get your guy, like I think it was a good move overall. And then they were able to use those later picks to trade up for Booker. They might have used one of those for the Mechie trade. I'm not 100% sure, but in the end, it all came together where they got an extra
they used it for the Christian Harris trade. Yeah, they used it. One of them.
Christian Harris, that's what it was. Yeah. So they traded up 3 times and traded down 1 time, right? Down for Green, up for Mechie, Harris, and Booker.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But yeah, I like Kenyon Green. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I think when you watch him against your kind of general run-of-the-mill, Arkansas, Auburn's, he looks okay. Looks all right. Solid. You watch him against LSU, not the best tape that game, and that is at guard, that spot. He potentially has the biggest upside in this class because I think when you look at the 34 and an eighth arm length, when you look at the size, when you look at the movement skills, when you look at the hand placement, I think it's fine. But he's got a kind of terrible kind of habit to overset when on the outside, and then on the inside he almost kind of ducks his head and drops his kind of his arm focus or his attack point onto the pads of the defensive lineman. So there's quite sort of reasonably fundamental stuff I thought watching his tape you need to clear up. There is points where he looks for work and he'll recognise a late blitzer and he'll hand off the double team and move over to the side. He does stuff like that really, really well. So that shows you that he's smart and he's thinking about it and he's not just looking at the guy right in front of him. So there's a lot to like, but there's a lot of kind of small technique points that not at the LSU game as well is not his best tape of the whole year. He is playing at left guard as well. That was one I want to watch because I thought, well, if he's not a tackle, it's hard to be sort of overly critical of the bad at tackle because they basically said he's going to be a left guard, but he gets bull rushed in that game for a big guy. That could happen a lot as well. So I think he's got a huge upside, but when you take a guard that high with all the needs we have, he's going to have to refine all this stuff. But look, he looks a really solid player, and I think we can't get away from that. That's what we need. But what was your kind of evaluation of his tape? I had him as my 3rd best guard in the class, but I had questions about him because we took him over Zion Johnson, etc.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm pretty much fully aligned with you. He is my interior offensive lineman number 3. Behind Linderbaum and then Zion Johnson. So 2nd highest guard in this class. But yeah, honestly, like you said, like taking a 1st round guard, you kind of expect them to be a little bit more polished. Your Zach Martins and those types, your Quentin Nelsons, like going to take Green that high, but still like 15, like still pretty premium for a guard. And I think Zion is the more pro ready guy, but Green, like you've been saying, is the higher upside because the guy, his size, like his length, he moves pretty damn well, and his highs are really, really high. He's able to just kind of pave lanes on the ground for you really easily, and that's something that the Texans desperately, desperately needed. So to me, this felt like a bit of a pick for filling a need rather than so much, getting best player available. Not necessarily the route I would go in terms of drafting, but at the end of the day, like I think we'll look back on it and say, hey, this was a pick that we needed. Maybe we reached a little bit, but he wasn't going to make it to our 2nd round pick. There were 4 other guards that went off the board in the 1st round alone. So there was high demand for the position. And so even though I had him graded lower than Zion Johnson, I gave him a high 2nd round grade. He wasn't going to end up making it there anyway. So that's where you had to take him. So I'm here for it. I think he will also, like Stingley, have a bit of a transition period, but that's mainly because, like you said, the technique stuff, and also not having to play all these different positions now, like just going to focus fully on guard, hopefully. That will be a transition period a little bit. But it should be a beneficial one for him because in college he played everything but center and switched sides. A lot of the time switching positions, even within the same game, he would switch positions sometimes. So we've seen over the years that is not the way to treat your offensive lineman. That's not the best way to get the most out of them as a coaching staff. So hopefully George Warhop, new offensive line coach, can just stick him at guard, not have to learn anything else, Titus stay at tackle, not have to learn anything else. Boom, you get the best version of these guys. I think Green can be a long-time starter for us, for sure.
Yeah, and I think when you think about the meshing of the skills, if Tunsil's still going to be here long term, I think there's definite questions about that. That was, everywhere. Peter King, Albert Breer in the draft, or pre-draft process. And you kind of get that. He's not really interested in football. He's been given all the money in the short-term deals and all that kind of stuff of the club. But, for the next 2 years, that could be Green's best prospect, because if you think Tunsil's the far superior pass blocker, lacks a little bit in run blocking, whereas actually Green's definite strong suit, he gets to the second level really well. He understands the next guy that's come, because ultimately we've seen that so many times where we've had guys pulling and they don't go make contact with the right guy, and it's just being simple stuff. And that was obviously from previous coaching. Obviously we went from Devlin and we got the guy for Green Bay last year, never quite worked. But I think you see that as a natural ability to go up to the second level and then clear out the second or third level player that's there. So for me, I think there's some definite kind of built-in early day one proficiencies in the run game. What we don't have, or we certainly haven't had, and we don't have from either, the two sort of at present day one set tackles for this year. So yeah, he might be a nice blend and mesh, and then he can maybe help you out in a pinch. I think that there's a lot to like there, but the refinement of Warhop and how he works on him is going to be really key. And if he's not starting week one, getting picked at 15, then I think again that's going to be an early test of, can the kid play at this level now? He might play in year 3 again. Both positions are long time transitions; they're not quick. It's not wide receiver, but I think that'll be the key test. Is he getting the reps in camp, and then is he out there week 1?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the important thing to note is kind of the improvement areas we talked about. Like everything's fixable, everything's coachable. Whether it's his, hand placement, which has been kind of erratic at times, his pad level, lunging or not, all that stuff is definitely coachable. So I'm not too worried about it. It's just something that we need to see progress with, and something that, because it's not there right now, that level of technique, you just need to temper our expectations a little bit. And so that's kind of my thoughts on the first round guys, really in general. So it's kind of more low floor, high ceiling.
We sat and picked one of the few picks we did sit and pick up at 37. And I think for me, this is my favourite pick of the class. And I think before we go in it, do you want to just talk through, for everybody's not familiar, Jordan, about the star position, how Pitre was used at Baylor?
Yeah, so the star position is a really unique one. Not every defense runs it, but it's essentially a hybrid position between a nickel corner, outside linebacker, box safety, that type of thing. Imagine 3 kind of positions morphed into one. And so who are some players who played it? Jalen Ramsey has played it a little bit. Kenny Moore for the Colts a little bit, not so much more of a pure nickel guy, but it's a really valuable position in terms of allowing Lovie Smith to do what he wants to do, because what you're essentially doing is you're getting a defender who has like the run defense capabilities of a linebacker / box safety, and also some coverage capabilities like a nickel corner. And so it's morphed into one. And so allowing you to play that type of defender on your base defenses, where you're going to have, your 4 down linemen, your 2 linebackers, and then your star, and then your 4 DBs, that's really going to allow you to defend the run and the pass at the same time, because now you have this hybrid player. So
here's Jonathan Joseph.
With the 37th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Jalen Pitre, DB from Baylor.
There's one play, if you watch him against Oklahoma State, and he blitzes off I think he's at the nickel, and he just comes up to the line of scrimmage, and then there's a puller that comes around from the other side. I think it's maybe like a 6 lineman in a jumbo set, and he just dives down and he takes the 2 guys out at once, and they just hit the day. I tweeted it out when I started watching on Saturday, And there's a couple of plays where he just comes off the line of scrimmage. If you look in the bowl game, first play of the game, tackle for loss, he's blitzing off the edge, taking tackles. And people kind of said, sort of Tyrann Mathieu light. And I hate player comps because they're quite lazy. And every player's a little bit difficult. But the more I watched them, I just kept thinking, yeah, actually. And the way he was used at the Chiefs, not obviously that one year in Houston, as they played him as a cover 2 safety, and they just kind of sat. It's 2 guys on the roof that didn't really do anybody justice, apart from bringing a couple of blitzes. But yeah, I just think he can do so much for you. I think there's different spots. He played at the will linebacker the vast majority of the time. You maybe not put him on first down there, but they had 2 safeties the vast majority of the time at Baylor, and he was never one of those. And he was always, and the amount of times he blitzes from the nickel spot, and we always saw Watson had a trouble with that. So, whenever Watson comes to NRG this year, when that schedule gets announced Thursday, let's blitz him at least 3 or 4 times off the edge and let's see what he's got. Because I just thought, for me, the pick 37, you sat there, you didn't give up anything. There was a couple of guys you maybe wanted to take ahead of him that might have been more effective. Ebuteki went after. But overall, for me, it kind of felt requisite value for the guy. So a question for you. Why do you think guys like Dax Hill and Lewis Cine went slightly ahead? What differentiates them from Jalen?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit more cookie cutter. They're more, that type of archetype has seen more success in the NFL, and it's more teams use that type of safety. Like Lewis Cine and Daxton Hill, they can be your strong safeties, like your pure strong safeties in the box or deep in a 2-high system as well. Whereas Pitre is a little bit more of a hybrid defender, and not every defense runs that star. Not every defense wants a nickel corner who is, better as a run defender than he is as a pass coverage guy. He shows potential there, but I do think he will need some refinement there. I don't think he's a guy that you want to line up man-to-man versus the best slots in the game, Cooper Kupp and all that guys. He'll get exposed a little bit there. But so that's kind of why I think they went higher. It's just more of a traditional safety, and they could be viewed as safer for teams. But then Pitre, man, he is so fun to watch play. He is so fun to watch play. That's why he's my favorite pick in this class, because he just leaves it all out on the field, man. 110% effort. He's flying around like a heat-seeking missile. He doesn't care that he might be a little bit undersized. He's 5'11", 198, not your typical box defender, right? But like you said, he will always stick his nose where the ball is, do all the dirty work, play with fire in the trenches. And I really hope we can blitz him like they blitzed him in Dave Aranda's scheme in Baylor. Because Lovie Smith historically has not really liked to blitz. He didn't do it a whole lot last year. I don't have the exact numbers of it, but you watch the defense, they just don't really like to blitz. They like to sit back in their coverage, just rush forward. That's always been his philosophy. But with Pitre, to get the most out of him, you are going to have to blitz him. That is his absolute best skill, best traits. He's so explosive, so athletic. And the thing is that you can blitz him. A lot of people think of blitzing as just in the passing game. But Baylor, what they would do is they would call a lot of run blitzes. And this is something that opposing defenses did to us last year, because we were so predictable in our runs. So they could call run blitzes and just boom, let's send an extra guy, and there's just no way they can block us all. So that's something I really hope Lovie Smith can do with Jalen Pitre, bring him down. So imagine you're playing Christian Kirksey, Kemu Grugier-Hill, and Jalen Pitre as your 3 linebackers there in the box. And if you kind of have an idea that a team wants to run a lot on 1st and 10, send Pitre, because he is so fast. Whether you're running away from him or towards him, he'll chase you down from the backside. He'll set the edge well if you're running towards him. He is a really violent player, and I love that. Nick said he plays with his hair on fire all the time. I think it's a really good explanation of who he is.
Yeah, and I tweeted, I think he just covers every blade of grass. And I know it sounds like a terrible cliche, but he really does. And I think he's got to, that point there, he can go and chase plays down the backside. Not all it'll take is a delay, because his acceleration to go and chase the play at the 2nd or 3rd level, you'll probably get there. There's a play where the ball pops out. I think it was in the bowl game, and then all of a sudden this body just comes from nowhere, and it's Pitre, and he takes the fumble recovery. There's a play where his DB gets beaten down the sideline, and then you think the guy's away, and all of a sudden this body just comes out of nowhere and takes the guy down on the sideline. So he never gives up a play. His motor's high. He doesn't mind mixing it up with tackles, and I think for me he was the most exciting player to watch. And obviously he's all action, right? So he's doing more than one role. Therefore, by definition, he'll show up more on the broadcast, and you know, he'll get more calls out and stuff like that. But yeah, and he's very crafty as well. Like there's a play against Ole Miss just after Corral got injured in the bowl game. He gets underneath the pulling guard and goes and gives a QB hurry. I think it ended up being a completion on the sideline, but it's just, he can impact the game in so many ways. But apart from obviously asking Lovey to blitz him, where do you think he fits him in to get the most out of him? Now, they may be limited and they may be more strategic and packaged for him in year one, but what would you say ideal role for him is in year one?
It's tough because we kind of have 4 of these same types of players, these nickel corners that are really good at blitzing and defending the run and open field tackling. You think of Jalen Pitre. You also got Tavier Thomas. Then you got Desmond King. Yeah, he played outside corner last year, but he's still best in the slot. And then you even got MJ Stewart, the new free agent signing out of the Cleveland Browns. These are all guys that are, you know, nickel corners, can play some strong safety too. Mainly Stewart and Pitre. So it's interesting because I think Tavier Thomas, you know, he played well enough last year where you'd kind of pencil in his name as the starter, but then Pitre, like high second round pick, like you're kind of expecting him to potentially start. So I think what I would do is, it kind of depends on training camp, see who's better at that nickel corner spot. My 2 favorites for that would be Pitre and Tavier Thomas. But I think if Tavier takes the nickel position, then you start Pitre at strong safety. And I think that's a position he can do really well because of the scheme that we run, because of the amount of times we're going to ask him to play too high. So we're not going to ask him to play single high. I wouldn't really trust him in that too much. But in 2 high shells, he showed a pretty decent amount of that at Baylor. They would disguise it pretty well, where he would come down in the box and then skirt back to the deep half. So I think that's something you can do. And we saw later in the second half of the season, Lovie Smith was a little bit more open to changing his defensive coverage calls. He was calling a lot more cover 3. And so in that system, you know, you're going to bring that strong safety down in the box. And that's Jalen Petre's bread and butter. You want him as close to the line of scrimmage as possible, as close to the ball as possible, because like you said, the acceleration, just athleticism, it will shine and he'll stuff the stat sheet, man. I mean, this dude had 18.5 tackles for loss in his last season. That is absolutely insane for a DB. So I'm excited to see him, man.
Yeah, and you think there might be a potential just to play him down as like almost kind of set up as a cover 2, kind of bring him down in the box to robber late on, try and change the looks, because if you think about, and I think everybody's forgotten this, how bad and god awful that defense was to watch. Almost like it was literally pegs in the holes. It was as if they'd drawn it up on the chalkboard and they didn't move from those spots. And when you think of how bad that was at the start of the season, I think it was a stat. I can't remember the exact number, but say it was 70% of the time we were in the same look post snap that we were in pre snap. If he gives you that versatility not to do that, it gives you a little bit of hope that we will be less predictable than we were last year.